For nearly 5 centuries, the Roman Republic stood as a beacon of power, law, and order. But by the end of the 1st century BC, its foundations were crumbling. Power was no longer in the hands of the Senate, it belonged to the generals. And one man, more than any other, threatened to reshape Rome forever. Julius Caesar had spent years conquering Gaul. His victories were legendary, his soldiers fiercely loyal. But back in Rome, his rising power was seen as a threat. The Senate feared him. They demanded he disband his army and return home, alone. The message was clear. Obey the Republic or be declared its enemy. It was a moment that would change history. To the north, Caesar received the Senate's demand. He stood at the banks of the Rubicon, the border of Italy. If he crossed it with his army, it would mean civil war. If he obeyed, his political career and possibly his life would be over. The decision was not made lightly, but history waits for no one. With a single step, the fate of Rome was sealed. On a cold morning in January 49 BC, Julius Caesar made his choice. With his army behind him, he crossed the Rubicon River, officially declaring war on the Roman Republic. It was an act of defiance, an act of ambition, an act that could not be undone. The phrase alea iacta est, the die is cast, would echo through history. Rome was now at war with itself. News of Caesar's advance spread like wildfire. Panic gripped the city. The Senate had hoped he would surrender. Instead, he was marching south, faster than anyone predicted. Towns surrendered without a fight. There was no time to prepare a defense. The Republic's only hope lay in one man, Pompey the Great. He had been Rome's most celebrated general, but now he was faced with a terrible decision. He had 2 legions, Caesar had 11. The numbers were impossible. A direct confrontation would mean certain defeat. Instead of defending Rome, Pompey made a desperate choice. He ordered a retreat. The Senate, the government, and the legions still loyal to the Republic abandoned the city. And so, for the first time in its history, the capital of the Roman Republic was left undefended. No army, no resistance, just silence. The city that once ruled the world was now at the mercy of one man, and Julius Caesar was coming. On January 17th, 49 BC, Julius Caesar entered Rome, not as a conqueror, but as a man claiming what he believed was rightfully his. There was no battle, no resistance. The Senate had fled. The greatest city in the world had been abandoned. The Republic was crumbling, but the war was far from over. While Caesar had taken Rome, his true enemy, Pompey, had escaped. He had sailed east, regrouping in Greece, where he still commanded vast legions. If Caesar wanted to rule, he would have to defeat him, but Caesar was no fool. He knew that chasing Pompey immediately could be a trap. Instead, he turned west, to Spain. Pompey's allies still held power there, and if Caesar was going to win the war, he needed to destroy every last threat. By the end of 48 BC, Spain was his, but his men were growing restless. They had fought for years, they had risked everything, and the riches Caesar had promised were still out of reach. Tension was rising within his own ranks. Mutiny was in the air. And yet, across the sea, in Greece, Pompey was waiting. He had rebuilt his army, he had secured alliances, and now he was ready. The final battle was coming. One last fight would decide the fate of Rome. The year was 48 BC. After a long campaign in Spain, Julius Caesar set his sights on the final obstacle standing between him and total control of Rome, Pompey. Pompey had not been idle. He had gathered his forces in Greece, assembling a massive army. He had cavalry, supplies, and the backing of Rome's wealthiest senators. On paper, he had every advantage, but war is not fought on paper. Caesar knew that he was outnumbered. His only hope was speed. In early 48 BC, he sailed across the Adriatic, landing in Greece with only a fraction of his army. It was a bold move, a dangerous one. If Pompey attacked now, Caesar would be crushed. For months, the two sides moved like pieces on a chessboard. Pompey had more men, but he hesitated. He wanted to wear Caesar down, to starve him out, but Caesar refused to break. And then, in the summer of 48 BC, near a small town called Pharsalus, everything came to a head. Pompey positioned himself with superior numbers, confident of victory. His cavalry outnumbered Caesar's nearly 3-1. His men were fresh, well-fed, ready to fight. Caesars were exhausted, hungry, but they were veterans. They had fought together for years, and they trusted their leader. The battle began. Pompey's cavalry charged first, hoping to break Caesar's flank. But Caesar had anticipated this. He had hidden a small force of elite soldiers behind his lines, men trained specifically to fight cavalry. In an instant, the tide turned. Pompey's cavalry was driven back, and now Caesar had the advantage. His men pushed forward, breaking through the center of Pompey's lines. Panic spread. Within hours, Pompey's great army collapsed. His soldiers threw down their weapons and fled. Rome's greatest general, defeated, Pompey himself barely escaped. He fled, seeking refuge in Egypt, believing he would find allies there, but he was wrong. As he stepped onto Egyptian soil, he was met not with friendship, but with betrayal. Pompey the Great, once the most powerful man in Rome, was now a fugitive. After his devastating defeat at Pharsalus, he fled across the Mediterranean searching for safety. His destination, Egypt. Egypt's ruler, the young pharaoh Ptolemy XIII, owed Pompey a debt. Years earlier, Pompey's victories had secured Egypt's throne. Now he hoped for refuge, for an army to rebuild, for a second chance. But power is a dangerous game. Ptolemy's advisors saw an opportunity. Julius Caesar was on his way to Egypt, and he was now the most powerful man in the world. Siding with Pompey meant war. Siding with Caesar meant survival. As Pompey's boat reached the shore, he saw familiar faces, Roman officers who had once served under him. He relaxed, but then, as he stepped onto the sand, the attack was swift, brutal, no last words, no honor. Rome's greatest general was struck down by his own former allies. His head was severed, placed in a basket, an offering for Caesar. Days later, Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt. When presented with Pompey's head, he did not smile. He did not celebrate. Instead, he turned away, disgusted. This was not how a Roman should die. But Rome was changing. The Republic had already begun to fade. With Pompey dead, there was no one left to stand against Caesar. His path to absolute power was clear. He spent the next years reshaping Rome, centralizing power, and taking the title of Dictator for life. The Senate still existed, but it was now little more than a formality. The Republic was no more, but power is fleeting. Even the mightiest rulers cannot escape fate. In just 4 years, Julius Caesar would meet his own bloody end, betrayed, stabbed by the very men who once called him leader. Caesar's assassination is a tragic tale, but a tale that shows just how incredible of a man he was. I hope you've learned more about Caesar today. He was not just an assassinated dictator, but a hero and loved ruler too. If you want to learn more, hit that like and subscribe button below. Check out more of our videos, and I will see you all in my next one.